There's something deeply unsettling about the idea of evil hiding in plain sight. We always expect monsters to be quite terrifying and obvious, but what if the real monster is quiet, has big blue eyes, and a small frame? This is the story of Mary Bell, the girl who killed, the girl who carved her name into a boy's body, and the girl who smiled at funerals. You might ask why? This is not just a crime story, because once you know what happened in the crumbling streets of Scotswood, you will never forget it. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Bedtime Crime. Today we're going to talk about Mary Bell, the girl who killed. If you enjoy this video, I hope you send it to your friends and like and subscribe to my channel. So let's get back to Scotswood, England in 1960s. It was a bleak place, the kind of neighborhood where the sky is always gray and the air carried the scent of coal. Houses were cramped and tired, and kids played unsupervised in bombed-out buildings from the World War II. Many notorious families lived in the area, and with many pubs around, men would get drunk all day and women stayed at home cooking and cleaning. Unemployment rate was up to 50% and prostitution was a common job among the women there. Calls to the police for domestic violence and fights on the streets were really common and frequent. But there's one thing that is really interesting about the people in Scotswood. They cared for each other because they knew they're all poor, so they would be kind to each other. And that's where Mary Bell was born, May 26, 1975. Mary's mom, Elizabeth Betty McCricket, was only 17 when she had her. A really religious Catholic girl who everyone thought that she's going to be a nun, but eventually became a prostitute after giving birth to Mary. Betty had really deep and complex mental issues, and she's rumored to try to kill Mary more than once before she could even walk. Pills pushed into her mouth, falling from the window, and many other accidents that did not look like accidents. Young Mary always suffered from injuries around the household when she was in the attendance of her mother. These accidents worried Betty's family to the point that they thought Betty was actually negligent or she was trying to harm her daughter. Betty's family tried to adopt Mary or take her away in some sort of way, but Betty declined all the offers. Mary lived with her 3 other siblings, her mom, and her stepfather. Mary's biological dad is not mentioned and is unknown, and Mary thought for many years that her stepfather was her actual father. Betty would travel to work in Glasgow. She worked in Glasgow, and she would leave her children with her husband, Billy Bell. Billy Bell was a tall, good-looking man who was a petty criminal and a drunken who married Betty when Mary was a few months old. And he actually reassigned Mary's birth under his name, so that's actually how Mary got Bell as her last name. Billy was in and out of jail and was usually on the run, and Mary said when the police or the authorities showed up at their house, Mary would say that my dad is not home, or she would refer to her father as her uncle, so that her mom would claim Social Security as a single mother from the government. Billy and Mary had a really close relationship, and they would spend a lot of time together. They would watch Western movies together, he would cook for them when he was home, and Mary had this bond with him. He would buy the same Alsatian dog for her whenever the previous one died, and really cared for her. But at the end of the day, he was not a really good role model for a child, especially for Mary, who looked up to him so much. Mary always fantasized about being a criminal, and she even once asked her dad, what's the worst crime you can commit, and to which he replied, to kill a policeman. But Mary, of course, knew that she could not kill an adult, so she had some other ideas. Mary's mom, as said, was usually absent from house because she went to work in Glasgow, and when she was at home, she would make life a living hell for Mary. Betty took some of her clients to her house, where she played the role of a dominatrix in sadomasochistic sessions, and Mary saw things in that one-bedroom house that no child should ever see. She would force Mary to sit there and watch all kinds of violence that took place. Beating, choking, whipping, and all of these things were parts of these sessions. She even allowed some of her clients to sexually abuse Mary since the age of 4. You know, that's really sad, honestly. She would blindfold her daughter with stockings and restrain her hands behind her back and held her by her hair to stretch her throat so she would perform upon the clients. Many years later, Betty told Mary that when she was pregnant with her, she hid in a convent because as a religious girl, it was really shameful for her to give birth to an illegitimate child. But she never told Mary who her real father was. She only told her that she was the devil's spawn, and it was better for her not to know her dad. After marrying Billy, Betty and Billy stayed with Betty's mom in her flat near Scotswood. Mary's grandma suffered from migraines, so she took medications for it, but she always tried to hide them so well so that children wouldn't find them and eat them. But somehow 1-year-old Mary had took some of those pills and was rushed to the hospital. This was Mary's first accident in the house. After a while, about a year later, Betty had moved out and wrote to her sister Kath saying that money was tight, so they gave Mary away to a family they knew and were eager to adopt Mary. Kath got really furious and took Mary back to her mom. On another occasion, when Kath was taking a visit to their house, she was talking to Betty and suddenly saw Mary and her younger brother sitting on the floor munching on the candies she had bought them, but among those candies were blue pills that belonged to Betty, and Betty said they must have taken them from my bag. But how? So Kath saved them again by giving them hot water and salt. After this incident, Kath wrote to Betty for the 3rd time, asking her to let them take Mary to their house and take care of her until she goes to school, but Mary declined this offer. Betty's mom had moved to a new building, which was a flat on the 3rd floor of this building, and Betty wanted to take a visit. All the bathrooms in this building were on the ground floor somehow, I don't know why, and little children were allowed to pee in the sink. So Mary was peeing in the sink and there was this big window wide open behind her. Betty's brother saw Mary crawling towards this window, and the moment she fell, he was able to save her by getting her by her ankle. That's really creepy, because if one moment was wasted, she would have died. Betty's mom got really worried and ordered her youngest daughter Isa to keep an eye on Betty and Mary and to not leave them alone together. That's how Isa found out that Betty gave Mary away to a woman coming out of adoption center crying. Betty was forced to take Mary back home, and that's how she was saved again. One day, a police officer showed up at Kath's house because she didn't have a phone and informed her that little Mary was admitted to hospital. So Kath rushed to the hospital and found out that Mary's stomach was pumped because she had allegedly took some of her mother's iron pills. When she saw Betty, Betty told her not to believe Mary, saying she was the one who had given her the pills. So Kath went in and saw Mary somehow unconscious, repeating that her mom had given her Smarties, which was later confirmed by Mary's best friend at the time. She told Kath Mary's mom gave her Smarties in the backyard. Aside from the accidents in the household, Betty would even abuse and beat Mary and her younger brother whenever she was at home. And when both parents were gone, Mary's Aunt Audrey, Billy's sister, who lived across the street from them, would take Mary's 2 younger sisters who were not able to take care of them to her house, but Mary and her younger brother would stay at home for some reason. Mary had this problem that she wet the bed since the age of 4, which can be a sign of abuse in children, more specifically sexual abuse, because bladder control is expected from the children over the age of 4. This led to Mary having sleeping problems because she was afraid to sleep and wet the bed, because when she did that in her mom's presence, her mom would wake her up, rub her face into the mattress, and then would hung the mattress out the window for everybody to see. At school, Mary was really smart, but she had no empathy. Her classmates said that she could be sweet and kind one moment but violent the other. She would hit, pinch, and one time she even tried to strangle a classmate. She tightened her grip on the girl's neck and squeezed as hard as she could, like she was curious to know what will happen next. And unfortunately, the curiosity did not go away, but it grew. Around the time, she formed an intense friendship with a girl named Norma Bell. Despite sharing the same last name, they were not related. But Norma Bell, who was 2 years older than Mary, lived next door, and they went out together, were unsupervised, unnoticed, and there was something dark growing between them. Norma was emotionally underdeveloped and mentally behind her peers, so Mary, who was the smart one, took the dominant role and became the dominant in their pair. And Norma would blindly obey Mary and did all the things that Mary told her to do. They played games that did not seem like games, pretended to strangle each other, joked about death, and did all the things that other children did not do at all. On May 25, 1968, 4-year-old Martin Brown woke up earlier than everybody else in their house, woke his little sister up, gave her breakfast, and then got ready, had his own breakfast, and said goodbye to his parents and left the house to play. He went to his Aunt Rita's house and woke her up, and then went to Davy's to have some lollipop. And there he saw his dad, and his dad didn't know, but this was the last time he would see him alive, unfortunately. Then he wandered off to play like other kids in Scotswood often did, and he found his way into a crumbling abandoned house, and he never came back out, unfortunately. A few hours later that evening, his body was found and he was pronounced dead upon their arrival. He was still in an abandoned building. There was no sign of struggle or any broken bones, and the police could not find out why he had died. The pathologist could not determine the cause of death, whether it was natural causes or violence. There was an empty bottle of aspirin found next to him, and the police thought of poisoning, but he was not poisoned. It looked like an accident, but it was not an accident. People in Scotswood thought it's because of Rat Alley's dangerous condition that Martin had gone into this abandoned house. He went up the stairs, he got scared, but he could not go back down, so he had died from horror and had some sort of heart attack. And so they went on the streets to protest against Rat Alley's dangerous condition and government's long clearance project that was not being done properly and safely. And guess who was there among these people? Mary and Norma Bell holding this big banner. Mary was one of the first people to show up at the scene after Martin's death. The workman who had found Martin told her to go because he thought this scene would be really overwhelming for a child, but he had no idea. After that, everything changed. Mary became really fascinated with the attention that Martin's death had grabbed. She would go around and brag about killing Martin. She would call the kids and would tell them that I have killed Martin, but nobody believed her because they thought she's just being weird. But one day everything changed in a way that people wondered maybe Martin was murdered. Mary and Norma went to Woodland Crescent Nursery and vandalized the place, smashed things, and most chilling of all, they left notes that said, I murder Martin Brown, I murder so that I may come back, and you're next. At first, the police dismissed the notes as childish pranks, but that's the thing about Mary. She wanted to see how far she could go without being noticed. She wanted to see who would finally pay attention. After Martin's death, Norma and Mary, who used to babysit for Martin's Aunt Rita, went to her house and bombarded her with questions like, do you miss Martin? Do you cry for him? And she was really weirded out because they had these weird looks in their eyes, and she tried to be nice and thought they might be considerate, but she was weirded out. And after that, one day before Martin's funeral, Mary went to his house and asked his mom, June, if she could see Martin. And of course, June replied, no, he's dead. And Mary said, I know, I want to see him in his coffin. Like, okay, you little devil. On June 1st, Norma urged Mary to run away with her, and that she had run away before, and she knew this guy's house was really kind and they could go to his house. Before getting really far, they were caught by the police and were taken back. And on their second attempt on June 14th, they stole some bus money, and Mary urinated on the floor before leaving, which indicates a way to showing aggression in children. And Mary, of course, was really angry with her mom, so she wanted to make her angry by urinating on the floor. So they headed to South Shields and found this guy's house. He got them in, prepared them a bath, and after they were done, he tried to sexually abuse Mary. Of course, no man would just randomly help two helpless children, you know? And Mary resisted, so he went to Norma, and he sexually assaulted Norma, and poor Norma thought that it's fun and games, you know? Later she told Mary that she liked it, and she didn't know that it was sexual assault. And I said, Norma was a little mentally underdeveloped. She had the mental age of a child, so she didn't know anything about this. And after he was done with Norma, he just left them on the road, and the police found them, and they were taken back to Newcastle. Norma was sent home. Mary was sent to a convalescent home for anoretic children, where she could do all kinds of sports and calm down a little bit and not to worry about wetting the bed, you know. She really liked it there. The owners were really happy and cheering. It was a clean place, unlike her house, and she could be calm, you know, she wouldn't be shouted at or get beaten. So after some days, she was supposed to go back home. She didn't want to, she refused, and she even asked the owners if she could stay with them. The police got really curious, so she was taken to the police office, and the police officer asked her in front of her mom if she wanted to be taken away. And of course, Mary denied, said, no, I'm okay at home. And she left with her mom and got a good beating for it. July 31st, 1968, just after 2 months of Martin's death, this victim was 3-year-old Brian Howe. Brian Howe lived with his siblings and his dad because his mom had left them, and he was best friend to Rita Finlay's son, Little John. Rita Finlay, who was Martin's aunt. Rita kind of played the mother role for Brian because she would take him to the nursery with John, or take him for the lunch, or sometimes would hit him with John if they had done something bad. And that day, Rita and John went to Brian's house, knocked on the door several times, and nobody opened the door because it was summer school breaks, and you know, the siblings were asleep, so they did not open the door. So Rita and John went to the nursery by themselves. And even the other students asked where little Brian is, and Rita said that he was asleep. And after that, at noon, Brian went out to see the demolition of a building in Rat Alley alongside many other kids in Scotswood. And after that, he played a little bit with John. And in the evening, Brian's sister started calling him for tea, or I think dinner, but could not find him. Everybody started looking for Brian until he was found laying between two concrete blocks in a waste ground called Tin Lizzie. He was covered in flowers, and locks of his hair were cut off, and there were signs of punctures to his legs, and these punctures were made by the same tool that was used to cut his hair. You know, the police immediately knew that this is not just an accident. There was also a blade found next to him that the pathologist later said that it was used to write the letter N on the boy's stomach that was altered into the letter M by somebody else. Like, who could it be? Pathologists came to conclusion that the killer was a child because of the strangulation marks on the boy's neck and the punctures to the legs that were not strong enough. Um, there were also signs of cutting in his genitals too, as if someone had tried to mutilate him but was not successful. So the police started looking for a child. They went to each child's house and questioned all the children in Scotswood. And when they went to Mary's house, her father did not let them talk to her, but she was later called to the police office, so she had to go. Mary and Norma's answers to the questions did not seem quite right, and then Mary made a mistake during the questioning that unraveled everything. She casually mentioned a pair of scissors, and that was what the police had kept a secret. There was also a witness, a 9-year-old boy who had seen Mary, but Mary said he was the one who had killed Brian and she had seen her with those scissors. But the police did not buy that because they knew that child was the witness. It was Mary who was lying. Norma broke first and she confessed. She said she'd watched as if Mary was trying to kill that child. She had squeezed his throat as hard as she could, and when she confessed, Mary was called to the police office again. Her mom was in Glasgow, her dad and her Aunt Audrey were in Durham, and Aunt Audrey's husband was babysitting them all. Mary, her siblings, and his own children. So Mary and Norma spent the night in detention, and each of them had a female police officer to keep an eye on them. Mary did not sleep that night because she was afraid she would wet the bed. She went to the bathroom multiple times, and she started talking to the female police officer, saying that I hope my mom is not angry with me, and I hope that she does not have to pay a fine, as if she was not scared for her, but she was scared for her mom. After that, there was this remand hearing that was held in the court. Her dad, her aunt, and her grandma attended this court, the remand hearing court that was held in the juvenile court specifically for the children. But Mary's mom did not attend. She was in Glasgow. And there were 3 social workers there that got really angry with Betty. So they had this idea. They took one day off. They drove to Glasgow, kind of kidnapped Betty while she was yelling and effing them, and took her back to Newcastle so she would attend her child's court. That's really interesting, that how some strangers care about your child more than you do. The trial started in December 1968, and it was 8 days long. 2 girls, one 11, the other 13, were accused of murder. Everybody was shocked. Norma cried, but Mary did not. She just stayed there calm, looking at everyone like she was bored. The psychiatrist who had examined Mary said that she was a classic case of psychopathy. She was intelligent, cold, detached, and they said she lacked remorse, that she could talk about death and joke about it. During this time, Mary gave 15 variations of Martin's death and never actually confessed to killings of Martin and Brian. She tried to put all the blame on Norma and said she was the one who killed Martin and Brian. And on the other hand, Norma was like, no, I didn't do it. Mary was the one who had done it. So the 2 girls were accused of murder and were charged by murder of Martin Brown on December 5th, while they were in complete denial. Since Mary was the dominant one in this friendship and she was the smarter one, and Mary, had this history in violence and strangulation of other kids, the jury and the public were convinced that she was the guilty one. And at the end of the 8-day-long trial, Norma was acquitted and Mary was found guilty of manslaughter. So she was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. After her conviction, the authorities and the government didn't know what to do with her because she was too young to be sent to a mental hospital. So she was sent to a women's prison for 2 weeks, but they could not take care of her there. So after that, she was moved to a remand home full of older girls, but she had too much freedom, so she made a lot of trouble. After that, she was moved again, this time to a secure children's home for young offenders, where she was the only girl there. Mr. Dixon and his wife were superintendents of this secure home, and they really loved Mary and took really good care of her. During these 4 years, Mary would spend a lot of time on learning things, getting her education, and she attended many classes that changed her a lot. Mary loved Mr. Dixon too, and she tried to make him proud by well behaving. Mary's dad was one of the constant visitors, and even her family members would send her a lot of gifts. Her mom would also visit her, and during that time, she had divorced Billy Bell and was living with her young boyfriend. She had abandoned her 3 kids and didn't go meet them. The kids were at Aunt Audrey's house, and Billy Bell and Audrey took care of them, And she tried to put all the blame on Mary for that and said that because of you, I have too much on my plate and I cannot take care of my children. During this time, Betty would write letters and poems to herself on behalf of Mary and sold it to magazines and made a living out of it, which I find really sick, but she did it. And the psychiatrist there and Mr. Dixon believed that it's better for Mary not to see her mom because after these visits, Mary became really aggressive and depressed, and they felt like all the things they were doing for her was going to waste because of her mom's visits. There's this famous poem that everybody believed Mary had sent to her mom, but it was actually her mom who wrote it. The poem goes, "Ma'am, I know that in my heart from you once was not apart. My love for you grows more each day. When you visit me, ma'am, I'd weep once you're away. I look into your eyes, so blue and they're very sad. You try to be very cheery, but I know you think I'm bad, so bad. Though I really don't know if you feel the same and treat it as a silly game. A child who has made criminal fame, please, ma'am, put my tiny mind at ease and tell the judge and jury on your knees. They will listen to your cry of pleas. The guilty one is you, not me. I'm sorry it has to be this way. We'll both cry and you will go away to other gates where you are free, locked up in prison cells. Your family are we. These last words I speak on behalf of Dad, P, and me. Tell them you're guilty, please. So then, ma'am, I'll be free." P is Mary's younger brother, and we, in your family, or we means small, which is from the Scottish dialect, because Mary's mom was actually Scottish. And many people thought that it was Mary who wrote this poem, but Mary told Gitta Sereny, the writer of the book Cries Unheard, that this poem was full of rubbish and was just like the poems her mom wrote, Like, why would you do that? After spending 4 years in Red Bank, she was suddenly moved to Style Women Prison, and she spent about 6 years there. In between, she was sent to an open prison once, but she ran away, and then she was taken back to Style. And after that, finally, she was sent to another open prison, and in 1980, she was released at the age of 23, and after spending 12 years in detention. She was being monitored by an officer all the time, and she found a job, she got married, and has her own daughter now. So I really want to know your opinion on this case and if you think the justice was served or not. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe to my channel. Bye.